one name on the face of this earth that can keep you out of hell. It's not Baptist, it's not Methodist, it's not Presbyterian, it's not Catholic, it's not Jew. There's just one name that can keep you out of hell, and it's the name of Jesus.
Lighten up, Francis.
Hey, welcome back to Atheistville. This is Ask an Atheist, and I am your host, Mike Smithcall. And tonight we are speaking to a good friend of mine, Carlos Pecciotto. I am saying that correct, aren't I, Carlos?
You got it right.
Carlos Pecciotto, yeah. So Carlos and I have known each other for a couple of years now, I guess. We met here in Chicago. We're both part of an atheist group. He's been over to the house a few times in different gatherings, and he has a very interesting background that I thought you at home would find very interesting, because I found it interesting. In fact, when I was asking Carlos some of the questions leading up to this, there was things I didn't know. I was like, okay, we've got to have you on now, because that's really interesting. So let's start with that. Just give us a little brief background about yourself. Where how long you've been an atheist, and then we'll get into what started. I'm just curious how long people have been an atheist.
Okay, sure. All right. Well, I grew up here in Chicago. And I've been an atheist since about the age of maybe 14, 15 years old, I guess it is. Okay. So
for a while now.
Yeah, quite a while, like majority of my life.
Yeah, right. Majority of your life. So tell us, looking at some of the questions you and I talked about, you started out fairly early with this, right? So give me a sense of that, because I'm seeing here that you said you were 9. Is that correct, or am I off on that?
It was, to say that I was, that I embraced Catholicism at the age of 9. I have to think about it a lot, because, granted, okay, I grew up in, I was, my father's side of the family are Catholic from Latin America. Okay. And, my mother's side of the family, they're just sort of vague Christianish, Unitarians. So I was told. Okay. But the stronger draw towards religion were from my relatives who were from Bolivia, and so I decided, I guess 9 might actually be better, a good number, because I think I was posed with the choice. Like, did you want to be Jewish? You could be Jewish, you could be Catholic, you could be whatever it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I did make my choice that I wanted to embrace Catholicism, just because, like, it almost felt like since my mother's side of the family, my mother birth side of the family they weren't churchgoers or any such like that. They're very secular-ish. Right. Still vaguely Christian, whatever. But at the time, you could be Jewish, you could be Catholic. I said, you know what? Because of the strong pull towards my father's side of the family, culturally, that I wanted to feel part of their world. And so I decided I'm going to be Catholic. And so my Catholicism intensified after I got back from Bolivia.
That's interesting, because that's actually quite interesting, because most of us, and I'm going to say most of us, I use some blanket statements here and there, but most of us growing up in this country specifically, you tend to be, and I'm going to use the word indoctrinated, and that's a loaded statement. I get it. But you tend to be indoctrinated because you're born into a family that if they are church goers, or even if they're casual, that religion is generally where you start out as a baby. Maybe you're baptized or whatever, or you go with if there's usually both parents are not religious. It's usually one parent is sort of religious and one parent's kind of not, if there's a mix, right? Yeah. And then you kind of just gravitate towards whichever one is the one that's more involved. Yeah. So you need to be given a choice at 9, to be asked, almost like, which parent do you prefer? That's it. That's very interesting at 9, because you've had enough. You're 9, you're still a child, right? But you've had enough time to sort of see things a little differently, or like you said, to try to think of it as a connection to something. So you made a little bit more of a conscious effort than certainly I did. And I was Episcopal, but I started going when I was a baby. I didn't know anything different by 9. I'd never been anywhere else, probably.
My sister married into an Episcopal family, and they all had their baptisms. They were all baptized Episcopalian.
It's very
my
similar.
my brother-in-law is like he's descended from Mayflower people.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, there you go.
But as far as that goes, I mean, I was, you say indoctrinated, more acculturated, I think is the better word here.
Sure. I mean, I'll go with that.
Acculturated because like my godmothers were doing their job. Apparently, my godmother was my dad's cousin. I think he's like technically she was his aunt or great aunt or something like that. But he referred to her as her cousin. She was like, a few years considerably younger than my father. And she was one of my godmothers. And so being like brought is sort of like the godparent is the one who's supposed to bring the child into a particular religion.
Right. Yeah. Supposedly. Yeah.
So and they were doing their jobs.
That's good. That's
I guess, I mean, in a relative, like they were, I mean, I don't say like they were like stern or strict about it. They just had a way about them, It was not like, you must believe this. It's like, this is what we believe. And, we do this, that, and we tell you the stories a little bit. And then like you are, it's what you grew up with. It's what you internalize. And so, yeah, I was acculturated into it via my godmothers and that side of the family.
Okay. So you're 9, and how severe is not the right word, but how involved were you at that point?
At that point, not at all, actually. I mean, I didn't have any religious education growing up other than, say, my godmother, my own curiosity, such like that.
Okay.
And just basically what I've, see the adults in my life doing, so it wasn't, so yeah.
Were you going to church each weekend, or you just culturally, like you said, Catholic, but you weren't going, you weren't an altar boy or any of these sort of thing, choir, nothing like that?
Nothing like that.
Were you confirmed?
In fact, I was. I'll tell you a little bit about that real quick.
Sure. Yeah.
I was going to touch back on when I was 10 years old, after coming back from Bolivia, where I pretty well fully like embraced Catholicism. My great grandmother would take me to the cathedral during, we do our little paseo from where we lived over into the main plaza of in La Paz, Bolivia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was only there for 2 months, but it was the impact on my life was outsized.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and so I was so we would go and I'd see the adults praying and what to pray to, who the saints particularly were, and there was a certain syncretism that was happening that happens in Latin America. Certain old gods, old deities are become saints. So it's kind of this. Yeah. It's polytheism, but like then brought into like these are just the saints. They're the ones who intercede for you. Between there, your intercedence on this earthly plane goes from you to them to the higher power. So,
did you find a difference between Bolivian Catholicism and American Catholicism? Were you old enough or experienced enough to know the difference, or was it very similar?
Okay, the rites and rituals were very similar. I mean, you go to a Catholic church, there's the there's a sit, stand, kneel sort of situation, all rise, whatever, and you sing a song and you hear the "Let us proclaim the mystery of our faith," ching, ching, and all that stuff. And occasionally the priest would go down the aisle with the censer with the
someone
incense.
said the other day the smells and the bells.
Yeah, the smells and the bells, exactly that.
Yeah, I know exactly what I meant. Like, yep, the incense.
So the rites were more or less the same, but the trappings, the surroundings were quite a bit different. In Latin America, Bolivia, from what and pretty much the rest of I guess Latin America, the depictions of a crucified Christ were much gorier.
Really?
Yeah, they showed the wounds. They showed him beat the hell up.
Really?
They beat the living daylight. They beat the living Christmas out of him.
Yeah.
So, and he's just like got a gash in his side, and there's blood coming. And it's just like it's like it's done in grand style. It's gory. Whereas here in the United States, you have this like white Jesus on a cross, completely bloodless, completely just
cleaned up, right?
Very, very cleaned up.
That's funny. Oh boy. just I'm gonna stop you because I was because you and I were talking and I missed a couple of questions here. First of all, Larry says hello, but then
hello, Larry.
So Velchin apologetics right out of the gate. Here we go. So you believe you are a bunch of evolved fish?
That's really that's too
Velchin,
unserious to even field. Honestly,
it's not a serious question. I'm
not a serious question in the least bit.
Yeah, it's not. I'm gonna get this out of the way though, because here's the deal. And Velchin, I absolutely do sincerely appreciate you commenting. I don't think you're serious with the question, but I do appreciate you engaging. I always say this in every one of these interviews. We're not going to get into a heavy debate in terms of Christian versus atheist. There's so many channels out there that do that. And if I wanted, 100,000 subscribers and a lot of clicks, that's what I would do because that really generates a lot. But it doesn't really make me feel particularly good and I don't learn anything. Mm-hmm. But so if you have a question that we can answer that's legitimate, I'm happy to answer. And Carlos is happy to answer. But no, we didn't evolve from fish. That's kind of a complete misunderstanding of how evolution works. Yeah. But I appreciate you taking a shot.
I want to recommend something. I want to recommend to this to Velchin Apologetics the really brief sequence of what science sees as how life evolved into humans essentially. And there's a nice little clip during like Cosmos. Carl Sagan, and even the Cosmos with help me, oh God, what's his name?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah. Thank you. I was just blanking. Yeah,
no, it's problem.
Just blanking on that. But yeah, there's a nice, quick little animation on how like cellular organisms came into becoming the creatures you see now in the Anthropocene era.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject, and we're kind of making light of Velchin's question because I don't think he was particularly serious with that, or she. I shouldn't say he.
They they're non-binary.
Yeah, they're non-binary as far as we're concerned because I don't know what the name Velchin means. But we're making light of that question up because I don't think it was particularly a serious question. But there are a lot of people that do believe that we think that we as atheists say that we evolved from monkeys, and it's a very common misunderstanding of evolution. Mm-hmm. And I'm 55. When I was a kid and was learning evolution, I quite frankly don't remember how I learned it. I've known the right way for so long. I don't know if I ever learned it that way. Maybe in fact that was taught, and the older you get, in terms like say my mom who's 75, maybe her generation was taught that it was a direct line from monkeys to you and I. Mm-hmm. But no one believes that. No one says that now. But it's a common question. I'm sure you've heard that. Someone has asked you that, and they definitely asked me that. Mm-hmm. And it's obviously meant as a little bit of a slur and a put down, but it's just so inconsistent with how evolution is viewed and how we think of evolution. But it's still pervasive. That question hangs out there all the time.
Yeah, and if I may say something, that growing up self-imposed Catholic, I'll call it that, I didn't really see any contradiction between my learning of evolution and the Christian creation myth.
Really?
The two concepts could lived in my head side by side without contradicting one another.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I had a similar feeling when I was a kid, because my mom, bless her heart, she was Episcopal then. Now she's Southern Baptist, a little bit more severe. But she told me as a kid that both could be true. That you could be created by God, and you could then evolve. I would, that's not really the worst explanation. I could live with that. If I had still believed in God, I could live with that, because it does satisfy the reality that we know of evolution. Right. But it allows for a creator. And then something else I always try to point out at some point, I don't know that there's not a creator. I don't believe there is. I don't live my life as if there is. But if some reason tomorrow I was presented by God and they said, nope, you were wrong. Okay. I can't know everything, but I don't live my life.
It's all about the evidence.
Yeah. And I have not seen the evidence that satisfies me. Same. But, so tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on how you how you put the two together and how you felt that they could live together with evolution and the creation story.
Well, it was viewed like, I would view just the creation story as just more of a myth, but like something that that was, the ancient reckoning of the people who had written what is now considered the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
They were if you're a Christian, a lot of the Old Testament is kind of like null and void. It's just like the swallowing of the idea, the idea of the Bible being univocal,
mm-hmm.
And being prophetic. That pretty much distorts any sort of truth that any sort of scientific evidence that's going to put the lie to, or just correct that which was said. Because the people who wrote these texts didn't have much of an idea. I mean, other than the fact that like stories passed on from one to another. It's about symbolic thinking.
Right. Okay.
And I think, honestly, I think God is really a metaphor that just kind of got away from everyone.
Well, actually, I
ran
wouldn't
away.
agree with that. I understand what you mean by that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so you didn't take the Bible or religion in general as some people do, where if it was written in the Bible you happen to be holding in your hand, that was 100% chiseled in stone, the word of God. You didn't take it that. You took it more as stories and moral stories and this, that, and the other, but not necessarily verbatim word from God, right?
Right, because I didn't grow up in any. None of my family were fundamentalist anything.
Okay, yeah.
So it's the fundamentalism. It's the integrist. As the French say, intégriste, which means like the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle. And that's their word for fundamentalist. But
okay.
the whole thing, like the whole story being literally true. I think that's just a tool of pastors to. It's a tool of control.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you, and it's not uncommon. I mean, I think some religions are more lenient than others when it comes to the word, the specific words. And of course, in fact, with the last person I had interviewed, Cynthia McDonald, she had quoted a couple of different scriptures throughout things that she had heard or used when she was a believer. And I always, when these videos are finished and I repost sections, I will sometimes go find that scripture from the Bible.
Right.
So it's Mark 16, blah blah blah, whatever the thing is. But it was never the word she was saying, because when you look at, you go to, like, there's various Bible websites out there. Mark 16 appears like 27 times because it depends on what Bible you're using.
Right.
So the words are not the same. This one says this, and their meaning is similar, but the words are different. And depending on how strict you are, they can be slightly different meanings. We all know about, the dragons or the unicorns and things like this nature. Other ones say something different because that's not the same word, and it's not the original Greek, or it's not, whatever. So it's interesting. So I'm with you that I didn't grow up with a strict adherence or a fundamentalist. Again, I was Episcopal. So that's a very casual Christian sort of thing. Yeah,
it's like Catholicism light.
Absolutely. I think one of the viewers on our show, Larry, said it's Catholic. It's like Catholic light. It's what is he? I'm trying to think how he said it. He's gonna post it here in a second. It's like all the rituals and half the guilt, or something like that. It's like a diet Catholic. So yeah,
right.
I do want to pick up on something, because you mentioned this earlier about Carl Sagan and Cosmos. You had told me earlier that was sort of a big deal for you. It gave you something to really chew on when you were a kid. Tell me a little bit about that, and when did that happen? Because that's kind of that's a highbrow sort of thing to be talking about when you're a kid.
See, when I was really interested in Carl Sagan's Cosmos, because I was interested in science. I didn't turn out to be a scientist too much. But we'll get back to that later. But the idea is that I was watching because I was really curious about how, what the scientific fact was about. I wanted to be educated on our place in the cosmos, Okay, there is all the religion, half the guilt.
Yeah, all the religion, half the guilt. Right. And I had a guy.
So, which is probably that's considerable.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to this. I mean, I as a science communicator, Carl Sagan certainly did his job with me. I was just enthralled with him. 11, 12 years old. I kind of had this sort of platonic crush on him.
Sure.
Just like here he was, like spelling it out. You know, talking about the what we knew scientifically to be true.
Right.
And so the idea that like what he was talking was laying down like was stuff that is proven, is verifiable, and in just the way he presents it, you can tell that this guy's not trying to take anyone for a ride. He's doing his job as an educator, as a mass media communicator. So and I mean he's got such incredible credentials as a scientist, as doctor. No one refers to him as Dr. Carl Sagan, but he is a doctor. Same thing why they don't call him Dr. Chomsky, they just call him Noam. Which we'll get back to in just a moment. But when I remember, like I had a cassette tape of my mother recorded the last episode just on cassette tape, just the audio for the final episode of Cosmos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's where he talked about the story of Hypatia, how she was viewed as this like brilliant educator, scientist, doctor, a role model, even considered possibly as a demigod, you know, a deity almost in her own way. And then apparently the emergent Christian church at the time, this guy Cyril, who was the Archbishop of Alexandria, was like, she needs to go. and he described how mob of his fanatical followers found her and did like unspeakable things to her, and her remains were burned, and lots of the books, scrolls, whatever texts in the Great Library of Alexandria, considered one of the 7 wonders of the world, was just burned, lost. And that's how they liked it, because they saw Hypatia and her ideas as competition.
Okay, sure.
At that point, Christianity had evolved into like that's probably one of the earlier incidences of like fundamentalist violence. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you said you were what? 12 or so when you started?
11, 12 years old. Yeah. That I heard this, and the story stuck with me, you know, Hypatia of Alexandria.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, and this is at the hands of like the early Christian church, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And like Catholicism, like basically Catholicism and Orthodox had really yet to schism at that point. It was just like the Christian church at that point. I mean, shortly thereafter, it's schism between the Church of Rome and the Church of Constantinople, Byzantium.
When you were, so you're getting into him a lot. Obviously, you're listening and you're thinking. And you're Catholic, but you're not attending. You're not going to Sunday school. You're not deep into it like that. So, did you have anyone to bounce this sort of back and forth off of, like, well, I'm over here, I'm Catholic, but I've got this Carl Sagan guy who's making a lot of sense and it's making me question? Who did you ask, or did you ask?
I don't think I really asked anyone. In fact, it was just some conclusions that I'd come to by myself. And at that time, though, I was taking CCD courses. At the age of 10, I decided, I want to start taking CCD is basically, hello, Mary Jane.
Hey, Mary Jane.
All right. So, anyway. And hello, Pine, evangelical atheist. I'm thrilled to see that you're watching me. So, but anyway, back to what I was talking about. Love you back. And it was a situation where like I was going to CCD because, you know, at 10 years old, I kind of wanted to like do the whole like get like fully integrated into the Catholic Church. You know, just because like with my family in Bolivia. They were Catholic, or my Bolivian family, some who came over here to the States, to Chicago in specific. Catholicism was like the air they breathed.
Well, yeah,
kind of something they just didn't question at all. It was just like, this is just how this is the way things were. This is how it was kind of like how Judaism is cultural. There's a cultural aspect of Catholicism, you know, and in order to become like more fully integrated into the Catholic culture, I pursued CCD classes. First, I got my first confession, and
wow.
I stopped going for a little while, but then picked it back up. And then I did eventually. I was slated for confirmation. I didn't. The weird thing is, I didn't have my first communion until after I was confirmed.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how old were you then?
I was 12 years old.
Okay.
I was 12 years old. Most boys are confirmed. Most children are confirmed at the age of 13 as they graduate Catholic school.
I said 12, but that's not right, because I moved to Florida when I was 11, so I was in Pennsylvania. So I was under 11. I couldn't tell you what age I was, but I was under 11 now that I think about the timeline. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So you went, though. So you're 12, 13 years old, you ever take. And then you said you were by 15, you were an atheist. Now, quantify atheism at 15. Were you, looking back, were you an atheist? Were you agnostic? Were you on a journey? Or was that journey from 12 to 15?
That journey was ongoing, actually. The journey from 12 to 15 was when I started, I started questioning even in the throes of my Catholicism, I was coming up with my own ideas. What did God look like?
Okay.
It couldn't have been, couldn't have been like this human form to me, just because it's because they say man made God in his own, God, again, the atheists will say man made God in his own image, and the religionists say the other way around. So, and in a sense, those two are like, believe it or not, they sound contradictory to one another, but in a sense that they're kind of secretly compatible. And I can't quite explain. I'm on the verge of being able to explain how it is. I mean, maybe it's just a quick twist of semantics that God made man in his own image, but really, maybe someone thought it was man God made, or something, just like got the syntax mixed up.
Right? Yeah. Be as simple as that. We have another comment that I want you to address. Actually, Wesley has about 5 comments. We're not gonna hit all of them because you'll see why. Here we go. Okay. So this is Wesley Curry, the second. Okay. So Wesley is not particular fans of ours. I'm taking it because we're deceivers. We're deceiving.
Are you rage watching, Wesley? Are you
Wesley? Come on, man.
Do you want to feel that rage, that absolute rage?
It really does. Wesley, you made another comment. I'm going to put it up here because I don't really understand it, and I'm happy to put up an explanation.
DECEIVERS.
Yeah,
that's great.
He says on here. He says, "I hope you're both happy." And he says this: "I hope you both get your money." And maybe, Carlos, you'll know what this next one is. The 32,500. I have no idea what you're talking about, Wesley. If that's a number that's significant in some way beyond a random cheap car, I don't know what 32,523 is. I'm happy to put your explanation up. Don't be rude. Yeah. But then he says he's kind of hoping we're both going to get branded with the barcodes. Okay.
Nope. You're just reading Revelation. You really are. It's Revelation is not prophecy. Revelation was a description of the times that that the book was written in. So place your reality with mine, and the actual Bible scholars actually there's a consensus that Revelation is not prophecy.
Yeah. So here we go.
Maybe in your vision and dreams.
It's the 32,523 is secret knowledge that Wesley has. You and I have never heard of it. But again, Wesley,
no.
To be fair, we don't really care.
Honestly, we don't flipping care. Honestly,
no. If that's a number that Jesus came up with, which would have been weird because they didn't have dollars, but whatever. Yeah, you've done the math. You've done the inflation since 2,000 years ago, and it's added up to 32,523. Okay. I'm going to take your word for that. That's somewhere in the Bible. And if you're willing to put up a scripture number, I will post it the next time when this video is recorded and released. But I don't really care. And I'm not dissing you, Wesley. I just, the things that are in the Bible, Carlos and I are both saying, we don't believe the Bible. So the fact that something is in the Bible, and I don't mean this to sound smart ass, and it's going to, because it kind of is. I have never read the Harry Potter books either. There's probably things in there I don't get. I've seen some of the movies, but I don't get all the references. There's things in every book that I've not read or read thoroughly and don't sleep with, so to speak, like every night. I'm not going to get, because I don't believe them, and they don't guide our lives.
Right.
But again, and now he's just kind of going off. So Wesley, we're probably not going to engage with you anymore, but we do appreciate it. As I said,
Wesley, I have one recommendation for you. Check out the Instagram channel of Dan McClellan. He's a scholar of the Hebrew Bible, and he lays it down chapter and verse like nobody's business.
He's very good. And Wesley did say bye. So bye, Wesley. But thanks for joining. Again, Wesley, as long as you're civil, Wesley, and you were, I think you were trying to engage with us, but you were civil. So I will, as civil as I can expect sometimes. That's fine. But I do appreciate that, Wesley. I'm not even going to address any more Wesley's things. So anyway, all right. So you leave there, you go into high school, and there, now here's where you make a twist at some point. And tell me the year when this happened. You go into, so you're Catholic. You decide at 9 years old you're a Catholic.
Yeah.
Then you start watching Carl Sagan. Then you become an atheist, and then boom, the natural next step is Judaism. Okay. How did that happen?
Oh wow. Okay.
And what was the time frame? Because I just have Judaism. I don't know when that happened.
Okay. Well, I mean, it all came, basically a lot of religion, a lot of this sort of religion, faith, culture. It's very it's a lot of it has to do with family.
Sure. Yeah.
It's family and tradition more than anything else.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Well, I happen to be surrounded by a lot of Jews in my life. A lot of my friends are Jewish.
Okay.
I went to a Jewish overnight camp, 81, but they allowed us to, they were very open about if you wanted, whatever faith you wanted to follow. Like I did go to Sunday thing. I did go to we did go to a church on a Sunday one time, and we did sing songs, sung Christian songs together as a group of Christians in this overnight camp. But that was just the start of things. A lot of my friends are Jewish, and through college too, I was finding a lot of commonality, and being in my father remarried into a Jewish family. I mean, when my father started dating Ellen, is her name. We don't. She's functionally she was our stepmother, but the word step was forbidden. She wouldn't. They did not. She is not your stepmother. No, she's Ellen. She's your parent. We don't use that word. So, a lot of clarification just to say that once my dad started seeing her seriously, her family embraced us. We went to a funeral for her grandmother, paternal grandmother, and it seems like boom, we were in the family. I got to be, I got to see my then to be aunt and uncle's infant son, my cousin Jamie. I was holding him in my arms wearing a Star Trek shirt. It was a really cool one. It was kind of dark blue with it was a paint. It doesn't say Star Trek. It was just it was a long sleeve shirt. My dad liked to dress me up kind of stylishly back in the day.
Sure.
I just remember that I have a picture in my mind of holding an infant Jamie. And this family embraced us from the get-go.
Good.
We attended, we were invited to Passover Seder a few times. And saw the old folks from the old world and whatever. It was very, so those are seminal experiences that I'd had. Yeah. And again, a lot of my friends in college were Jewish, and I would sit with them during Passover, and I would eat Passover food with them because it was a change of pace from the rest of the dorm fare. And I liked the fellowship a lot. I like talking to, I love talking to my fellow, I felt I felt like Jewish by association.
Yeah.
So that's how it all evolved, really, because it was my family, and then a lot of people I associated with, and it's so I started to I dated I dated some Jewish girls, and one of whom was fairly observant, very like kind of serious about her Judaism.
Okay.
And we were we were quite close. We've lost touch with each other since, but essentially like it was just through those associations that I felt like I feel a connection here. I really do. I feel like, and getting to know like what Judaism is as a culture, as a faith, if you will, that I learned that Jews debate each other. Religious Jews will debate each other on the Torah, on the Tanakh, on the Talmud. They would just like get into it. It was definitely this inquiry was encouraged. And that's why you see like Reform Judaism, Orthodox, Conservative, Reconstructionist, Hasidim, and a number of different variations of Judaism. It's all based on like, what does Adonai want? What does God want for us? What is he really saying to us? That's from the religious standpoint. But I've noticed that like a lot of like many Jews, even religious Jews, have like debated and came to a conclusion that really is no God. It's just about carrying on the unique traditions of this culture that stretches back millennia.
Yeah. So it was the cultural aspects of it, which I can totally appreciate. And I appreciate that actually for a lot of religions. I don't bash religions on here per se. I'm going to say that, and then of course something I'm going to come out of my mouth is going to sound like I'm bashing it. I'm not bashing religion in terms of some of the good things they do in terms of family, because I grew up in it. I grew up in family. You go and everybody knows each other, and it's fine. We lived in a small town in Pennsylvania, like 9,000 people, compared to the big city of Jacksonville, Florida, that I eventually moved to, and now Chicago. So, you were in a small community, and that was part of it. And your family went there, and your friends went there, and your parents' friends, and therefore you were friends with those kids and everything else, right? I appreciate all that. So some of the cultural things that you're saying that you appreciate about Judaism, I can understand why that could have an appeal, if not the spiritual aspect of it. If I'm trying to make the separation between the cultural and the spiritual, and the belief part, I can understand that. It's an interesting thing. In Judaism, aside from most religions, does have that odd mix where it is a culture and it is a religion, and they do not necessarily always go together. There are plenty of atheists in Israel who are very strongly Jewish, but they are not believers. It was interesting when I first learned that, and then later on, I'm like, how does that even make sense? But it's kind of along the lines of where you're going with it. It was a cultural thing. You appreciated that. And, some of the rituals, not the religious rituals per se, but those things. I'm missing the words here.
They tried to kill us. Let's eat is pretty much the basis of a lot of Jewish holidays, observances.
Yeah. I want to get to a question that we had here, David, because I told David I would get to it, and I didn't want to lose it. And I didn't want to disrupt you. But David has a question completely outside, but it's going to come up at some point.
Fair enough.
So, question for both: what do you think the origin of life and or matter is? And I'm gonna let you go with that, and then I'll follow up on you if you have an answer.
We own what I think is only what science has been able to reveal to us so far. Let's be. It's a matter of being honest. Of what do we know? And what is matter? What is life? And those are questions being tackled by people much that have those questions are above my pay grade, and they're being tackled by people who are much more like intensely studying them, who have done the math literally, who have done the experiments, seen the results, have the hypotheses, the theories, etc., etc.
Right.
And so we only know what science has told us so far, and that is a process of discovery. It's something for people who are people who have a certain comfort with uncertainty.
Yes.
You know?
So you and I are sort of hitting that from the same spot. I always tell people when that question comes up, because as you know, as an atheist, it comes up all the time, and we're expected to have an answer. And I think that is one of the significant things that separates, say, you and I from, say, a believer, is we would say, I don't really have an answer. First of all, I'm not educated enough to even have a real hypothesis. I can trust others like a Carl Sagan and say, okay, that sounds reasonable based on my having not studied it anywhere near the level of Carl Sagan. And I wouldn't pretend or have the arrogance to believe so.
Right.
And I can also sleep comfortably tonight, not knowing how it all started. That's why I said earlier in this conversation, if a God came to me and said, no, you're wrong, man. I was hanging out. I didn't come down. I should have talked to you earlier, but no, I'm here. I created it all. Sorry for the misunderstanding. I'd be like, awesome. Thanks for letting me know. But that hasn't happened. It's not going to happen, quite frankly. And I'm okay with that. I don't know who invented the wheel either, but I'll get in my car tomorrow and drive on 4 of them. It doesn't matter to me why it started. If there was a creator, that's fine. If there was not a creator, that's fine. I'm okay with not knowing. Believers, and I'm again making a blank statement, tend to want to, and we would call this the God of the gaps, right? They don't know, so therefore it must be God. And of course, our question a lot of times we'll go back to is, okay, God created the universe and God created matter and God created all these things. Our very next obvious, logical, and reasonable question is who created God? If all things must have a creator, you have to keep going back because all things have a creator.
Well, you know what?
No, God's always been here. Well, if you can accept that, why can you not accept that the universe has always been here? It's the same acceptance, right? They both have no start. They're both just here, and we're just living our lives going forward with them having started something. But it's an interesting, and I'm, what was it, David? I think it was David, right? Yeah, David Funk. Thank you for that question. It's not an uncommon question for people like Carlos and I. So I'm always happy to sort of address it. But you and I are both not saying that we're experts on the beginning of matter. So
okay, so what I want, this brings up an interesting memory, a little anecdote of mine. I was with I have a good friend who I've known since the age of 2. And I was with his family. I was a teenager. I was definitely an atheist by then, and definitely starting to lean further towards the left. And I told folks I'm an atheist. And his grandmother got really kind of frantic with me, like, "Who created you? It's like, who is the wrong question? It's not a who. I mean, I wasn't able to answer any of your questions, nor was I super inclined to. It's just like, go back. She wanted me to, I guess, to think. Go back and feel like there's a who behind this. There isn't always a who. In fact, there's no who when it comes to what came before us.
Yeah,
because who only came when we came up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the idea of who, the idea of like personhood, of like consciousness, of agency. You know, that's the only time when who is ever relevant.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and it kind of goes where I think those kind of questions come from a lot, which is a very human question, right? Because humans, you and I are on a podcast, and I'm talking into a microphone. I have a keyboard and monitors, and I have a light and all this stuff. That something was created by something, right? This is in case these are all men. Men created man created all these physical things I see. So the things that I know man did not create, water and trees and the animals on the planet, humans would say, okay, well, if I didn't make it, someone bigger than me had to have made it. And that's where I think we get ourselves a little stuck. And I say man, because we're looking for that mechanic that put all this together.
Right.
And I would say, as from my own perspective, it's like, no, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I might make a building. I may screw something together in my garage, but something could have just always existed, or I just don't know. And I'm gonna, you saw my cat jumped up earlier. I'm gonna pet my cat anyways. I don't know why. Exactly. I don't know why we have cats, but that's fine. I can live without knowing. You know.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you another question. So, because I saw something here. So this is where we're gonna go in a completely different direction, which
I love it.
May rile people up.
Let's do it.
So tell us about anarcho-communist. Am I saying that correctly? Is that the correct term?
Anarcho-communist, yeah.
Okay. Explain that a little bit, because here's where you're going to lose some people. People that already didn't like you because you're atheist are really going to not like you now because you didn't say you're a capitalist. So tell me about that. First of all, tell me how that came about. What was that journey there? And then, no, in fact, I'm going to switch that. Explain what that is, and then go back and explain where that came.
Okay. Anarcho-communism is the concept. It's the concept of no hierarchy, no like a society without hierarchies, where people are basically on the same economic, more or less, they're on the same economic footing. They are, they're all, basically, this can be summed up very quickly, all for all. Like anything we make is a product of it. We can is given, taken, without finance, without any of these other without mediators that are trying to take a little bit for themselves. And it's I mean, it can be like when when we've grown up all our lives swimming in capitalism, it's a really difficult thing to conceive of. It's like a number of people have broken on through to the idea that, communism isn't just like sort of staid, monochromatic, brutalist. Everyone marches in the same uniform. Everyone lives in misery, is forced to work X amount of hours and blah, blah, blah. No. That's what they told you. Communism is about workers controlling the means of production. It's about you and your fellow workers. You're working, not working for anyone else but yourselves. You have this. You have. Like you determine how many hours, you determine how much everyone gets, and you like as collectively. That's pretty much basically the idea, the simplest idea about communism. And anarcho-communism means that there's nobody above you that you did not agree that would be a leader. So the leadership position in anarchism is one that is come up with by consensus. It's come up with for legitimate reasons. Okay, this person is showing signs of being able to lead, and so this person too, and that other person, and so okay, let's decide who's going to be captain, and then they are immediately recallable, or what captain, or like manager, or any of these sorts of things. But it doesn't. There's not a managerial class. There isn't like a priestly class. There isn't class. It's a society without classes. We're just human beings living among each other without unjust hierarchies. And
let me ask you this then, as a person who's worked in basically finance all my adult life. I have an MBA, so I certainly have a lot of capitalism in my back, and I'm not opposing what you're saying. I understand it. Does that not? I'm going to link two things here. First of all, I'm going to ask you a question, but I also want to link see how this links to atheism or not.
Yeah. But
is that a practical or plausible reality in the grand scheme? Wouldn't it tend to just devolve into a Lord of the Flies sort of thing? Because people are naturally, some people are very dominant and some people are very submissive, and the dominant people, and I'm going to use this and it's going to inflame somebody, and I don't really mean it this way. I don't really mean it to inflame, but we have someone like President Trump, who is a very dominant personality. Doesn't matter if you like him or not. He is nonetheless a very dominant personality. He has a very bully-like sort of style about him. You imagine if he was running a Foot Locker someplace, or a retail store, he would be no less dominant. He would just be limited within his dominance, right? And how do you keep that person, in your perspective as a communism, from being the leader because he takes the power, not given the power? Because if everybody else is fairly meek and doesn't like conflict, or just doesn't have that same level, they're going to just sort of step back and say, okay, fuck it. You run the way you want to run it, and I'll just put up with it.
That's an excellent question, because it touches upon some skill sets that become like that anarchism has sought to cultivate. and one of which is community accountability. If you have someone who is like a bully, like in a situation where there are no like unjust hierarchies, they are basically called in by their community and basically saying, no, it's not how this works. You are, like it's, it requires a skill. There's a skill set basically that's cultivated that I'm having a hard time exactly explaining it, but basically, someone like Trump really couldn't exist necessarily successfully in an anarchist society where like hierarchies are only temporary. Like you won't, like, for example, the captain, like this guy, like say Donald J. Trump is like in part of a group of people who are, they want to be delegates to the larger, they seek to be delegates to the larger bodies of decision making in the society. If he starts making like crazy this, that, and the other thing, he's immediately recallable. He's like, bro, and no one's gonna, and they're gonna, like, people won't put up with him. They just won't put up with a person like Donald J. Trump if he's being like that. I mean, Donald J. Trump is a creation very much of this economic system, and very much a creation of just like his acculturation, his like his father being this real estate guy, and basically the kind of like a lot of the times the kid, my father's a pretty well self-made guy, and I'm a product of his success. He came here with not very much, worked his ass off, and he's now lives a very, very good life. And I am, and I benefited from a lot of that, but at the same time, I'm not going to say that's the way, because I'm not the majority of people.
Okay.
I didn't grow up. I grew up with a good amount of privilege. He's a product of like growing up in privilege, and privilege does things to your brain. I'm in a constant state of undoing my own privilege.
Okay. So
privilege and hierarchy are two big things that those are tackled by anarchism and communism, in the sense that like again, like if only certain people have these X amounts of freedom, that's just privilege. It's not actual freedom. Freedom
so
is
are you saying we're gonna move off this in a second, because it's gonna get people like way deep into the weeds on this, and I don't have enough questions because I haven't really thought this until just now, right? But are you kind of also saying that, because you said he wouldn't succeed in this in the environment that you're laying out?
Yeah,
he succeeds in our environment, in our capitalist society,
right?
Because it is a capitalist society, and the culture that he's grown up in for, what is he, 79, whatever the hell he is, he's had all that time to get where we are.
Yeah.
So if you were to have the last 200 years, say, of our country, 250 years as a different society, you don't think that someone like a Donald Trump would have succeeded to the level he has, because people would view things differently. Is that correct? Is that a fair assessment? Okay.
Right.
So let me ask you this, because I want to move a little bit sideways or backwards. How does that connect to atheism, or does it connect to atheism?
I'm glad you asked, because when I mentioned a priestly class, religion has been traditionally like, first it started out as a group of a fellowship of people who shared a similar belief system, but then there ended up being hierarchies. Because like religion is automatically kind of a hierarchical system, dates back to like the beginnings of like places like Sumer, where Gordon Fiala, freedom is defined as not being forced to do anything. Liberty is defined by not being able to stop from doing something. We'll address that in a bit.
I just want to put it there.
It's a little tangential to exactly what I'm talking about here. The definitions of liberty and freedom, but the ideas of like, hierarchies evolved eventually with people accepting more permanent leadership structures, and knowing that there was an entity above everyone, or at least someone is able to persuade, this entity that we've decided to imbue with supernatural power wants the society to be stratified. And so basically that my thinking on that whole thing is that there started to be people who thought like they started to stratify society, and a lot of it is through religion. You look at Hammurabi's code from Sumer, where where it came from on high, came from the great god. I forget what the great god is like, but basically this great god handed down the laws of Hammurabi to him, and that it's a way to sort of it's a way to justify hierarchy, and also through using a code of conduct, or at least enforcing a code of conduct through hierarchy. That this big thing larger than us, who has our fates in its hands, is going to basically get on you if you're not on board. Which is another way of saying, like, the guy says that the big guy upstairs says, you're doomed if you don't get on board with a lot of stuff. But a lot of this stuff that, a lot of these laws that have handed down, a lot of the laws did make sense in that, like, it was forms of attempting to, forms of justice. Yeah. There's ideas of justice are, the ideas of justice exist both in a non-hierarchical and a hierarchical society. It's just that that justice is just sort of like the hierarchical one is just more like cuts too many corners, and that then eventually, like, there becomes a group of people who are considered the priestly class. They're they're separated from the rest of the world because their only dealings are with that of the supreme being, the higher power. Yeah. The highest power. And then like people get really imbued. It's basically like God is a metaphor having just like become a runaway chain reaction. Right. To a priestly class who is very closely linked to what ended up becoming a ruling class. Sometimes the priestly class was the ruling class. They were, well, for sure. Well, you wouldn't say exactly now. Well, not in this country, but certainly in the past, they were the ruling class. I mean, everything was right. And I guess you could say that in different cultures around the world where the religious, the people that are leaders in the religion are basically the leaders of the country. And it's usually not a good thing. I would say almost always. I did want to hit this real quick. Something else Gordon said, which I thought was just interesting. I want to get your opinion on it right here. Which has been a vanguard that funds the prosecution of tyrants. Prosecution for tyrants, I should say, right? Is it other for? I assume it's for, because I assume, Gordon, correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that religion has funded tyrants, essentially, is what you're saying, right? And I would agree with him. Yeah, if that's what you're saying, then Gordon, we both agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, it's shown through historically. Yeah, that is a fact. Yeah. Okay. Good comment, and thank you, Gordon, for putting that out there. Let's see what else I have for you here. Let's see. I'm going to go a little bit different here. Oops, I'm going to go back to this. Did you say you study linguistics? Did you go to college for linguistics, or is this something you study as more hobby? No, I have my bachelor's degree in linguistics from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Okay. And which is, I don't know, to me it just amounts to being able to do certain party tricks, because I didn't feel like I was really well prepared for the world going forward, for that field going forward. After I got that diploma in my hand, I was like, what am I going to do with this? I didn't didn't have a final integrative project that had me understand a lot more how everything just ties in. So I'm like, let's just, okay, I think I'll become a bike messenger.
Why not?
So that's literally what happened with me. So, and my understanding of language, influencing my approach to deconstructing. It's basically code switching.
Mm-hmm.
It's a concept of code switching where you're seeing universal truths in what are, what's present, in religion, which tries to present to you that we are the be all end all, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
But inside, but they've basically been able to, I guess, appropriate universal, just universal facts about, universal truths. They've appropriated universal truths and turned and gave them different trappings. And so, in order to see through this, I had to basically how to remove God from that language.
Yeah,
essentially is what how to remove God, how to remove the supernatural from these from these texts, and into something that is more in line with what we actually know scientifically, socially, and what sort of religious again, I'd love to do is share with you. There's a term there's a Jewish term called brucha, which means like a blessing. It's a type of prayer, a ritual, if you will. I'm going to find you I've got here in a second.
Sure. Is it brucha? Is that how you say it?
Brucha, B-R-U-C-H-A, brucha.
Bruja. Okay.
It has nothing to do with the word bruja, like as a witch in Spanish, or brujaha, any of that sort of thing. Completely unrelated words linguistically.
Okay.
Okay. Secular bruja for the menorah. I wrote this like 3 years ago, and the prayer is usually Bochata, Danai, Lachenu, Melachalab, etc., etc. Which I haven't memorized it in Hebrew anyway, because it's of limited use to me, honestly. So my secular brucha for the menorah goes as such, because it says, "Blessed art thou, God of the great, who created everything. That we are we do like the menorah because for this because God has brought us here to do this, and God has given these traditions that we honor, who's created the universe, etc. Right. And that have also given us the life and brought us to this moment. So the way I put it the way I use it in secularly is it goes, "In awe are we of the great mystery of creation itself, that through processes known and yet to be known, brought us here for what we may define as good or ill, and in contemplation of our existence are so moved to kindle the light of the menorah. In awe are we of those forces of creation which actions have mystified our ancestors and whose traditions we honor. In awe are we of those same forces of creation that gave us and all sentient beings life, and sustained us and enabled us to reach this season."
Okay. So I see what you did. I mean, I see how you took out the, like you said, the mystical side of things.
Right. I mean, there's still plenty of awe. And when Carl Sagan talked, getting back to Carl Sagan here, who had famously said something about the actual nature of the cosmos, the actual nature of the universe is awe-inspiring enough. Why do we need to pretend to be that? Why do we need to glom on to a supreme being when just observing what happens, what unfolds in the universe is already enlightening and just awe-inspiring in and of itself? Yes.
In fact, that's another thing that comes up for believers when they talk to atheists. And I know where they're coming from, because that's their worldview, but they'll say something like, "How can you look at the Grand Canyon and just not see God? Or how can you look in your baby's smile, when we have, I have 2 kids, and not see God? And how can you see it other than just awe-inspiring life?
Yeah.
But why do I have to attribute it to God?"
Yeah.
isn't that enough? I mean, we were just talking to somebody the other day that they were going on a trip, and I said, have you been to the Grand Canyon? He said, no, I haven't been. I was like, you got to go, because it's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing what water and time and erosion can do. And we appreciate the aesthetic beauty of it because we choose to see that as beauty. It's amazing. It's awe-inspiring, more than almost anything I've ever seen in my life. The Grand Canyon is amazing.
Right.
But I can stop right there and say that's amazing for what it is, without having to go the extra level and say, but someone sat down spiritually, and created it. Like, yeah, I don't have to go that far. I'm fine with the awe that it is by itself.
And I will say this, there are a lot of, there's a term called thought-killing phrases or thought-killing concepts. God is a thought-killing concept. It just kind of, you just basically cut things off at like the why, and like a greater wonder of like, okay, if this guy in the sky did it, then we can just say praise be to God, and just like, instead, like if you aren't attributing it to anything more than natural forces that have been set forth by just this unique system of this unique chain of circumstances that have come up, you then want to delve even deeper and deeper and deeper. And that itself is much more honest and much more enlightening and much more spiritual.
Yeah.
Because I believe, like, I follow what I like to call the way of the spiritual atheist. Basically, being spiritual as an atheist means having a rich inner life, of inquiry, and basically embracing our true human nature, which is empathy and cooperation. That, we talk about like competition, survival of the fittest. People are going to want to take more for themselves. They call that human nature. No, that stuff came about much later than actual human nature. The reason why we as human beings have been so successful is our ability to cooperate with one another. If we were constantly at odds with each other on every single little thing, which a lot of like people who are like mishandling this country believe, or people who are like have put their faith into people who are mishandling this country, this world. They would not be able. Human race would be kaput. We would just be an evolutionary dead end.
Do you think, and I'm trying to form this question as I think through it, because you just said something that I've always thought very similar to what you just said, that as human beings, if you strip away our capitalism or communism or the trappings of a governmental and organized sort of process, right? You put X amount of humans together, and for the instinctual survival, there's just compromise. There's getting along. There's trying to do things. Do you see things like that they would say are commandments, that in religious people would say often that atheists have no morals, because without the Bible, how would you know not to kill people? And my thing is like, because you don't kill people. That's right. It's not a moral thing as a societal, as human beings that live together. I can't kill people just for the hell of it because I'll be killed. It doesn't work. That would not last very long, Lord of the Flies style. That didn't work well in the book. It wouldn't work in reality, especially on a grander societal level. These aren't morals given to us by God. These are just human instincts to get along for the betterment of the tribe, the betterment of the group, however large you want to go. Yeah. And there's always someone who's going to rock the boat. Okay, but they got taken care of as well. But so is that sort of where you're thinking that same thing, right?
Yeah. Okay. In fact, when getting back to the whole communism idea, is that like capitalists want to say that competition, and survival of the fittest are our true nature, but communism actually does work a lot more closely with our true nature of cooperation and consensus and empathy, in that we are that if given a chance to cultivate those more than we do, like I got mine, F you, then we would have such a society. I mean, I as as an anarchist communist, I'm more on the visionary side of things, in that like I want to challenge people to think more about the society they would want to have, because we're at an inflection point right now. We are definitely at an inflection point of like which road do we take? Do we take the road that's we're being shoved towards, or do we do pushback and head towards a better society where empathy and cooperation are much more developed?
Yeah.
So this, again, my vision involves, again, like the concept that as we get to cultivate empathy as a society, which is happening a lot more. I mean, and you see the pushback in these Christian nationalists saying that empathy is satanic for somehow. That is based on like such a really poor, maybe deliberate misunderstanding of scriptural writing, of the biblical writings.
Yeah.
The kind of empathy that they're talking about is the one the actual scriptures say to not do. So, and so a post-religious, post-capitalistic society, what would that look like? Well, isn't that us to envision? Why don't we put our brain cells to something like that instead? What do we, again, like what's interesting is that I want to bring this out, that not every anarchist is an atheist. There are atheists within religious concepts. For example, I was just talking to my friend Ken Wong, a visionary himself, a musician. I play bass in his band, and he's constantly thinking politically. He's really well read, thinks very deeply about things. He talked to me about this group of they were considered heretics called the Church of the Free Brethren, where it's not a God on high, but we are all God because God is within us. We are the ones. It's like the kingdom of heaven is within. It's not just some like thing that some guy tells you. It becomes more of a non-hierarchical relationship with the spiritual, with these concepts of the kingdom of heaven, which I reject necessarily, but I can translate into more that I would be moved to translate more into secular concepts that like are the rich inner spiritual life that cultivates our the higher vibration. So a lot of people say of like empathy and compassion and cooperation and helping the vulnerable. So a post-religious, post-capitalistic society will look a lot more like people actually taking agency of like basically having more agency over economic activities, because people run their own workplaces. Again, they get to determine how much free time they have. They get to determine what technology is appropriate to reduce the amount of time we spend working. What kind, again, like I want to see artificial intelligence developed in such a way that it does reduce the amount of time we have to toil versus being frozen out of a job that AI can now do. The AI works for us rather than competes with us.
So let me ask you this. I sort of asked you this earlier, but based on what you're saying, and I said I'm not opposed to it. I'd have to sit down and think about it to really come up with a good, a good philosophical point of view on it. Because my first knee-jerk reaction is I'm a capitalist in the sense that, like I said, I've worked in big banks and financial institutions all my adult life, as does my wife. My life that I live is a product of capitalism. There's no way around it. And for the most part, United States, most of our lives are a product of capitalism. Whether we choose to participate in it strongly or not, we're still part of it. So what you're saying, let me ask you this. Is it possible or plausible at all to undo what we do now? Because I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, because it's going to get really too deep in the weeds. Because I can't imagine, like, if we wake up tomorrow and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, which is not how it would work. It'd be an evolution. So I guess that's sort of my answer. It would evolve, and then we get rid of the trappings of that.
There are steps.
Yeah, there'd be a series and we've spent a long time getting here. We'd spend a long time getting out of it, right? But I'm struggling to know how that could be how many generations it would take to undo that sense of, I have to beat you in some way. I have to achieve more. I have to earn more. I have to spend more. All the sort of things Americans are very guilty of, and other societies, to go to where you're going in this sort of more the common man, groups together for the common good. I can appreciate that philosophically. I just don't know how practical it could ever be, given where we're at already.
Right.
Starting 1,000 years ago, yeah, but we didn't start then, so we have to start now.
I see now the undoings of all of that eon, or at least millennia, not even millennia, just centuries. It hasn't existed. The concept of capitalism is a fairly new one from just maybe not even what 300-400 years ago. If that, it's
but
it's
at the same time we had not capitalism per se, but you had kings or queens or rulers who clearly wanted more for themselves. So the early beginnings of that, right?
We're seeing the unraveling of that right now with the mounting of fascism around the world, not just here in the United States. I'm just going to call it straight up for what it is: fascism. It's capital. That is capitalism in crisis, and because it's happening now globally, it's showing its faults and signs of weaknesses, and we're headed towards the end of it right now. I'm not trying to be apocalyptic or anything like that, because I don't believe in the idea of apocalypse. Apocalypse is a misreading of biblical texts, but the idea that it's maybe it's cataclysmic socially. But we're seeing the undoing of it because people are now seeing what's happening in the world. People are now seeing all the people that have to be suppressed in order for these particular systems to succeed. Like, for example, I don't call it the third world, second world, or third world, or the developed world or the developing world. There's the looted world and the looting world. The looted world is a place like Africa, the global south, poor countries in Asia and such. And populations in these countries that have been they've been the put-upons, they have been the surplus. They're the surplus labor. And I'm seeing we're seeing it for pretty much what's going on. I mean, what's happening now in Israel is they view Palestinians as surplus labor. They don't need them, so they're just gonna exterminate them. Which, everything can be done by an Israeli. But so it just kind of shows you that this is the logical conclusion of all our settler colonizer capitalist system that we're seeing right now. This is just, it sounds like all jargon and dogma here, but we're actually seeing it unfold in real time right now. We're getting to hear about all the populations that have to be kept down in order to prop up the lifestyles of the rich and famous or infamous. And
I would agree with you that
we're at an inflection point. We got to see what's going to happen, and it's not just going to be something that's going to happen spontaneously. It has to be concerted effort. That day is coming sooner or later. It's unlike Beetlejuice, which I'm not talking about the movie, I'm talking about the star that we see in the forget which constellation it shows in. Scientists have been saying that Beetlejuice is about to go supernova, and it may have already done so. Just we haven't seen that yet reach Earth.
Right.
So in that sense, that our efforts, our efforts we may get to see Beetlejuice go supernova in our lifetimes, or we might not, because we might not be lucky enough to survive. But I'm not saying that it's in the offing, in the centuries or even the set of decades. This is imminent. This is imminent.
I'm gonna have to think about this. I don't know that I 100% agree with you. I will acknowledge, though, in my 55 years, therefore 30, 40 years of being sort of aware of how the world works, or as a general awareness, we have definitely seen a push back against capitalism more recently than I've ever seen in my life. And I'm sure there's always been people who push back against capitalism, because there's always people that are on the have-not side who want to push back, right? If you're on the have side, capitalism's pretty nice. You got a nice house, got a pool, got a nice car. What's to complain about, right?
all the systems of control, all the systems of control that that have existed are now starting to fail.
Yeah, so I agree with you that we see them. I don't know the imminence of it. It seems, I don't know. I think things are relative, but I think there is some revolution happening, and the revolution will be televised, as they say. I mean, in my 25, 30 something years I got left, will it happen? I don't see that.
You don't see that. Okay.
Check back with me in 30 years. We'll see who was right.
Right. Yeah. Again, like we don't absolutely know for a fact, but what we can say for certain is what we can say and do for certain is see it through, see this, the birth of a new world. Like that's why I try to encourage people. I want to meet people where they are rather than like using all kinds of shoulds, sure. But I want to meet people where they are, and I want to just at least speak with them and struggle with them, essentially, in the great Marxist tradition of dialectical materialism, in that like we disagree on a certain point, but through synthesis of us talking it out and like getting people to see, like getting each other, I guess, to throw away the dross and see what's really coming about.
Yeah.
That's how it's gonna, that's how it has to happen. It's very, it has to happen on the micro, and then like it needs to scale up, and it's happening on a larger scale than people want to think. Those forces who control what we see and what we think aren't willing or able to show us the type of work that's already happening about people talking it out and struggling with one another to come to such a conclusion,
Yeah, I want to touch on something you just said because it was important, and it sort of brings us back around before we get to the final question here. A friend of mine, my wife and I were out the other night at Second City, in fact, and we were some friends of ours, and we were walking back to the train, and he and I were talking about the death penalty. Now, he's from a different country where they don't have the death penalty. They haven't had it in his or my lifetime. And it was interesting. We were starting to talk about it, and we had different opinions. And because we were talking and walking and going to the train, we didn't get to finish it. But even as we were discussing it, I could tell we don't agree, but we were discussing it. We weren't fighting about it. We weren't arguing about it. We were discussing it as reasonable adult men. And I was like, this is exactly what we should do. And it's the same thing. And here's where I'm bringing you back with religion. We can disagree with the guy who was on here earlier that I eventually had to put in timeout because he kept just going on and on and on, that Wesley guy.
Yeah.
But if you can have a civil conversation and you can have a civil disagreement, 100%, I am so behind that. And what you and I are saying, like, I'm not 100% sure. I'm 100% sure I don't agree with you today. I don't know that I will ever agree with you. But I was fascinated to hear it because I hadn't thought of it. I haven't. And as I said, I haven't had time to really process that. I don't know where I'll come down on the end of that. I think I know where I'll come down, but the more I think about it, maybe I'll change my mind. But we had a reasonable conversation between two people. We didn't have to fight or go to war, personally or bigger than that. I think that's why I like what I'm trying to do on this channel is I want to talk to people and get different ideas because maybe it sparks conversation and not a fight. We're so tribal right now. Everything is a fight. Yeah.
Right. Everything's like
halftime. It's just a slight disagreement, or I don't quite see it that way. And I could be persuaded, or maybe I won't be, but I don't have to hate you.
No,
I just disagree with you.
Right. Okay, exactly. Disagreement does not mean like
I can't agree with you. And we may not be friends because not you personally, but if there's something, if you're a racist, well, we're never going to get along because we cannot agree on some fundamental human things.
Right, exactly.
But other things like, okay, I was a card carrying Republican for many years, and I am a card carrying Democrat and liberal now for different reasons. But philosophically, there's still a lot of things I agree with what the Republican Party used to stand for. I wish they still stood for it. They do not. Okay. Right. I can disagree with people, but it doesn't mean I hate them,
Right, exactly.
So I want to get to our last question here. This is where I always want to go with this. So if someone's out here watching you and they've had any of your in terms of the wide array of thoughts here between religion and or your political, if you will, governmental, philosophical points of view, what would you tell them if they're struggling with all of that? What would help you? What do you think would help them get through it? Or what, maybe a resource that you might have, you say, you know what, check this out before you do anything else. Run to the library and grab this, whatever that would be.
Right. Okay. A few things. There are a number of people, creators on Instagram and TikTok that consider themselves they're in the process of deconstructing their religion. They came from fundamentalist backgrounds and are now questioning what they've been going through. And these are some really, like, every human voices. Every human voices, people who are like, just like they're speaking their own truth, you know, and you can tell that it's, you want to hear from people who are speaking their own truth about their own journeys away from like such a rigid hierarchical way of thinking. Like, I'm trying to remember. There's I can't remember. There's a few, like, there's one woman that I've been watching about like her journey away from, I guess, Mormonism, and another guy, like I mentioned, Dan McClellan earlier, who is a scholar of the Hebrew Bible.
It's very interesting.
Has been so instrumental in, like, pretty much just confirming my own thoughts on, you know, what the Bible is and what it ain't, and
he's Mormon.
What it's being used for.
Did you know that he's a Mormon? Like, today, practicing as a Mormon.
He's a Mormon. But what's really interesting is that, like, he comes from a very, like, humanistic perspective.
Yeah,
I mean, humanism is a really great way to help embrace, like, the, you know, if you're drawn towards atheism, I would recommend go. You know, humanism is a way to go. The American Humanist Association is a great resource. I'm a celebrant in the Humanist Society. I can legally perform weddings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there are there's a number of different people, who are considered, you know, they're deconstructing their religion and political activism, and some books that I can totally recommend people read. One of which is A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn.
Okay. And we'll put these in the show notes, by the way, for anybody who's watching. Later on, I'll add these in. Okay. So what was it? Tell me the name again.
A People's History of the United States.
Okay.
By Howard Zinn.
All right.
And hang on a second as I reach over here. Not let things fall over, blah, blah, blah. I'm grabbing a book here.
Sure.
All right. This guy right here, The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow. You want some actual solid information on, like, society as it was in prehistory and some of the new discoveries that they have found in like at certain archaeological sites in Turkey and in that general region of the world.
Yeah. Okay.
David Graeber, may his memory be a blessing. He was the like probably one of the most groundbreaking anthropologists, archaeologists, sociologists out there, as far as, like, being able to show that that societies are not always rigidly hierarchical. They are sometimes hierarchical and sometimes completely horizontal. But he makes a great case for horizontalist societies. Okay. And through the use of data and through the use of evidence, through the use of just, like, scholarship. That's one thing. And there are a number of books that I haven't read. The Sower's Parable, or the Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, but I've heard is, like, a very important book to learn, to read, especially in these particular times, because I want to give voice, or I want to give exposure to female and Black, Indigenous, people of color authors and thinkers. Yeah, sure. And so again, like, the two guys, like David Graeber and Howard Zinn, are they're white guys, but they also happen to be, like, people. They're great resources for helping to undo our concepts of what we think has always been. Yeah, you know, to help get people to think past their indoctrination and their miseducation.
Yeah, which is a tough thing.
Yeah,
sure.
it is. And Cosmos by Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, those are great. That's great watching. And I love what Seth MacFarlane had done to the series, providing animated segments to really because animation really helps educate people. Look at Schoolhouse Rock, for example.
Oh my God, I still remember.
While we know we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, et cetera, and why we know that why we know like grammar, apostrophe,
conjunction, junction. What's your function?
Junction. What's your function?
I remember that 50 years ago.
Right, exactly. This
I'm just a bill.
The early
sitting
70s.
Here on Capitol Hill.
Right. I mean,
I hope I don't get copyrighted for singing such a bad version.
There are some, but I'm just using it as animation as a
it's a teaching tool. It cuts through, and it doesn't have to be, anybody can watch animation and get it and understand, and it's very effective. Obviously,
I have to call out the producers of Schoolhouse Rock for their history rock, where they there was one called Elbow Room, which is extremely colonizer centric, and it's anti-indigenous essentially.
Oh, really? Well,
they erase the histories of the indigenous people and what it took for what it took for this Elbow Room to be gotten. It took a lot of like bloodshed, a lot of oppression, a lot of
whitewash
lies and broken promises.
Yeah,
and that doesn't cover it. And it's not convenient, for them to say anything
left it out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So,
well, that's cool. Like I said, I'll put those books that you mentioned in the show notes for people that are watching, and put a link to them on Amazon or wherever we can find them. Probably Amazon. But thanks, Carlos. This has been a very different conversation. So I appreciate the difference. I really do. Because it went in some directions that normally we don't go in, not because we don't want to. It's just it hasn't come up. So that's been a tremendous value to me. Give me something to think about, which is what is why I do these. I want to talk to different people from different backgrounds and different perspectives. As I was telling Cynthia a couple of weeks ago when we had her on, I'm a middle-aged white guy. I can only have my perspective. I can guess what yours might be, but it's probably not 100% true. Right. And someone like you have a different political perspective than I do. I don't know enough about it to have a good opinion of it. So now it gives me something to chew on and to think about. May change my mind, may not, but that's the whole point. It still it inspires me to want to find out, right? And that's, I think, is what atheism is supposed to be about, and science is supposed to be about. I want to find out what I can.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Carlos, for being on the show. I really do appreciate it.
I had such a good time, Mike. It was such a thrill to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak my mind and try to be disciplined about it.
Oh, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. And again, for everybody watching, we try to do these as frequently as we can, and this will be live tonight, and I will start to put out smaller segments so you can have little bite-sized chunks, and not everybody's going to want to watch for an hour and a half if you're catching this later. But look for the smaller chunks, and we'll also release this as an audio-only podcast. Right now, it's only on YouTube. I'm gonna put it out on Apple or Spotify here and probably this week or next. But if you're just listening at work or you're driving the car, you can put your phone on YouTube and listen to the audio version of this. So that'll be out there probably in the next couple of days. It depends on how long it takes me to edit it. But other than that, thanks a lot, everybody, for watching, and tune into our next one. And until then, stay safe and be kind to one another.
Thank you again, everybody.
Take care.